going down.
What's up? Welcome to Weird Rap, triumphant episode 1. Weird Rap focuses on rap music's most advanced artists, its experimental fringes, and otherwise unique or mysterious manifestations in the world of hip-hop, new and old, exploring its beauty, its complexities, and its curiosities. For our first episode, we've got an interview with Rob Sonic. We've got guest reviewer Curly Castro talking about Skip Coon's classic album, Miles Garvey. We've got Little Ghostwriter commenting on schizophrenia and schizophobia as they apply to Milo, aka Rap Ferreira. And we'll do a rundown of recent music releases. But now, you may know him from Hail Mary Mallon, Sonic Sum, or his amazing solo work. It's Rob Sonic.
Working on another record. It's always a perpetual sort of continuous loop of working on music for me. So I'm working on another one, and I'm just doing that.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to talk about the new album. So you released the single Boca Raton. That's from the new album, right?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to keep it on there or not. I just felt like it was sort of a peaceful jam, and it was like at the beginning of the pandemic. So, people had a lot of time at home, and I thought it would be it was just kind of a, for the most part, it was just sort of a relaxing sort of, surreal sort of song. So I thought it would be cool to just sort of throw that out there and give it to people for free.
Yeah, I felt like that song was so strange to me. Like for you, it seemed very different, from the music, which was to me, it's sort of almost like an 80s synth pop vibe.
It's definitely synthwave. I mean, I always sort of worked in that area. My production was always, I tried to stay away from sampling. I've been doing that for a long time. I mean, coming from Sonic Sum, that was more sample-based production, and I just felt like that when I got an opportunity to release stuff through Def Jux, that to sort of separate myself from that in terms of sound, that I would sort of just delve into the world of synthesizers, and I sort of fell in love with just tooling around with a bunch of synths, and there's a sort of story to that song. And it's about some guy that gets in trouble in New York, and a lot of New Yorkers end up at some point going to Florida. But that's where this sort of character in my mind, who was sort of delivering this song, was at. Okay, I'm here in Boca Raton, and if you pick apart the lyrics at the end, you can sort of get a vague idea of where that's going.
Yeah, for me as a listener, I definitely heard the jump between Sonic Sum and your solo stuff to a way more synthesized, almost like a industrial element, I felt like. And then if I were to generalize, I'd say that since then, I feel like it's gotten a bit more streamlined and impactful.
Yeah, I think definitely with the writing. I think when I was writing stuff for Sonic Sum, and I think that there was sort of more left up to maybe interpretation back with that stuff, and I sort of did that purposefully. As I started making solo stuff, I sort of went back to where I was before that point. It was all a conscious effort with Sonic Sum to sort of pull back a little from this braggadocio sort of arena that rap lives in. Because at the time when we dropped and when we were making all that stuff, it was, jiggy stuff was sort of just coming out of, it was becoming the mid to late 90s. And, we had just come out of where everybody was wearing Timbs and rocking Wu-Tang and Black Moon, and then we sort of went into the Puffy era and things like that. So I just sort of wanted to separate the sound of Sonic Sum from that. So when I went to do solo stuff, I sort of returned back to where a style that I was more sort of came up with. And
And you mean that lyrically?
Yeah, the subject matter in like Sonic Sum, there's stuff like Salad Fork and, you know, Calorama Gala, which are, you know, they're definitely, it's definitely rap, but it, you know, I didn't really pay attention to certain writing rules for rap as much as I do now.
From my perspective as a listener, I feel like your lyrics have always been a bit, well, very cryptic and hard to decipher. Now that you mention it, it does seem like maybe there was a more of an element of battle rap, sort of braggadocious style when you changed over to the solo. But still, like all of it, I feel like is very much like a riddle or something. Actually, I wanted to ask you: does it all mean something, or is do you ever just?
Oh yeah,
it always means something.
It all means something to me. You know, like I never really just sat down and just wrote for writing's sake. Mm-hmm. So it all means something to me. It's just, you know, the way that I formulated my style and came up with stuff was to, you know, be as different from anybody else out there as possible. I mean, that was sort of New York's mantra for the longest. Was like, don't sound like anybody else, don't write like anybody else. And sure, you can be in the same lane with certain people, but that was sort of how I separated myself, was just to, you know, sort of delve into the abstract, if you will, without that being too cliche. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it means a lot to me, but, you know, everything means something to me, but I don't know if that really translates over to the listener sometimes.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you how you would expect or hope that people would absorb your lyrics, if it's something that you would think that people would kind of listen to over and over and get more and more out of it.
Yeah. Well, I think wordplay, as you know, it's come a long way. I think that people are definitely more clever. It's been through enough generations that people are more in tune with picking up clever lyrics. You know, not even if it's clever. You know, I would never say anything like that about my stuff, but I do try to be clever. So, you know, I also sort of came up in, you know, listening to jazz a lot. So, you know, I think that there's something to be said for that, because it influenced my early stuff a lot in terms of how a piece of music doesn't have to necessarily be laid out there for, you know, in such a layman way that you know, it's one directional. It's you know, it doesn't have to be done like that. So that's probably part of it too.
Would you say that your approach to writing lyrics over the years has changed as far as the construction or the subject matter?
Yeah. I think it's definitely an evolving thing. I think that when I was probably first starting out, I mean, I started writing lyrics when I was like 11 years old, you know, so that's like the 80s. And it was pretty much a way different thing. There was like Run DMC, and there was like just a few people doing it that were like big enough to be heard on a large scale. The rest of the stuff was, you know, like, you know, just you'd be able to listen to rap like 1 hour on the weekend, and that's it. It wasn't what it is now. So I think I've tried to adapt and change with the times and stay current somewhat. I mean, depending who you ask, some people will say I've been able to do that, but then other people will be like, well, yeah, you know, but, you know, there's this or that, you know, the reason that it doesn't really pop is because I was either doing something that was too advanced at one point, and now it's sort of lost and nobody cares about lyrics anymore. So it's just, you know, I still do my thing, but, you know, how people would deem the evolution of it, I think it's pretty straightforward. And I think you could, you know, I would be able to notice that if I was from an outside party looking at it. but I also don't know how many people were aware of me before even something like Hail Mary Mallon came out, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have noticed a difference in the delivery and the cadence. Like I said, a lot of the lyrics are just kind of like a mystery to me. So I was wondering, about subject matter. Like, what would you say you're writing about most of the time, and how has that changed over the years?
It's always sort of been my experience. It's always been, my experiences, or, a lot of people say that I'm like, heavy on the pop culture stuff. I was kind of like a latchkey kid. So I just watched a shit ton of TV until my mom got home, and, back in the day. And then I've sort of paid attention to that as well. Like, like there's certain, influences, without it just being, New York was really heavy as an influence for me. New York City itself, and the Bronx is just, there's so much interaction amongst different types of people that, just the slang and the way people talk to each other is, so it's sort of its own planet there. So that was a hugely important part of and kind of integral to the way that I write and deliver stuff. So, my surroundings and the important parts of little things that I pick up would probably be as much as an influence as anything else.
It makes me think that with the Hail Mary Mallon stuff, you work with Aesop, and he seems like another person that, to me, is similarly difficult to decipher, and also maybe uses a lot of local references that I wouldn't pick up on. And I was curious if the two of you had to explain your lyrics to each other at times when you were collaborating, or if you just...
Nah, not at all. Like, we vibe each other in that way because we're sort of, like I said, we're sort of in the same lane.
Yeah.
So, we understand that a lot of it's about like the 90s in New York, and there's other parts of the movement there too, like Graff and things like that. Like, if I would be able to be anything else but, a rapper or a writer, I would love to be an artist, so that's sort of a visual artist. So, we connected on that in itself, because I think he went to art school and all that shit. But I think that's probably the best thing, is it's like outsider art. Like, that would probably be the best. And again, not trying to be cliche, but that would probably be the best way to sum up my stuff. Like, it speaks to certain people. It's probably not going to be, largely accepted, but, it's a style, and me and him sort of bonded over that, that we both sort of come from that, like, push yourself artistically, and whatever the final product is, almost not, it's not irrelevant, but it's, you as the artist are in control, and you are the artist are determining what you're releasing. So, yeah, we don't have to like sit and like break down our shit to each other.
Yeah, seemed like an ideal pairing for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned you started writing raps when you were around 11. Do you remember any of your first rap that you ever wrote?
Oh man, I think the only thing I ever remember, because the 11-year-old stuff was like the only thing out at the time, was like Sugar Hill. So my stuff was probably just trying to imitate that stuff.
Yeah.
That would be the best way to put it. Like, I was just like, heard that, and I'd be like, oh, I can write that. I think one of the first, God, I'm trying to think, it was stuff like so simple, like hungry as a tiger, sly as a fox, that kind of shit. Like, it was so crazy. And then, like, I evolved a little bit out of that. Like, it was just something I played around with, because everybody in school would like get around, and we'd all put like money in a hat, and whoever would like win the rap battle would get the money, But that sort of, man, I wish I could like think like I remember stuff after that, but as 11, it was probably stuff like, whatever I was writing about was probably what an 11-year-old is talking about.
Okay, what's some of your earliest rhymes that you can remember?
Jeez. I think probably the earliest I can go back is probably like 13 or something, and it was just stuff like about how good my DJ was. Like it was my DJ at the time was named SMK, and he was an older dude, but he like sort of was guiding me. So I just did a whole song about how you could, what is it? My producer drinks on juicer. Lyric producer, sucker duck producer. Say goodbye to crack, don't turn your back. I might be new, but my name ain't Jack. NFL, and my cadence was terrible at the time. Like NFL for football playing, RIP for rhyme saying, Demo Boys posse specialize in sucker slaying.
Beautiful. What was your rap? What was your rap name?
Back then, I was Rob Ski.
Rob Ski. Oh, the same as Beans.
Yes, I've actually toured with Beans, and we've had that conversation. I think there was probably a million Rob Skis. Everybody went by Ski. You know what I'm saying? Right. It was like, the flyest, but also, the older heads, like, I was just a kid, so I was like, oh, Rob Ski, that's a great name. But I had no idea what skiing was back then,
Yeah, I wonder how Ski got introduced into the rap name world.
It's coke shit.
Oh, yes, no.
It's always been a part of music, you know what I'm saying? So, that was it, But I think it was also just, I'm the skiest was also a way of just being like I'm the flyest, or like I'm so ill,
Yeah.
Like I'm the skiest, like homegirl, I'm the skiest,
Yeah, I wanted to keep talking about the Boca Raton song. Like I said, it really took me back because, yeah, I mean, you've been working with synthy sounds, but it sounded a lot more mellow and pretty than a lot of your other work. And then besides that, just the structure of it, which is like some like really verbed out female vocals for almost the whole song. And then at the very end, you do a verse, and it's just the whole thing was just really strange to me. And I wonder if it's as strange to you as it is to me. And if that's something like we can expect on the new album, this sort of structure and sound.
Yeah. See, I mean, it's definitely different from me and stuff I've been making for the last, probably 5 or 6 years. And that was just out of sheer desire that the shit didn't like get boring to me. So I definitely made an effort to sort of make it as I'm kind of glad that you're saying it sounded strange and the setup of it was strange because, that's something I always try to keep, like, cause there was no real rules to anything when I started listening and making music. So I try to push that through again, cause I feel like where the Mal and stuff, yes, it's very different and our writing styles are different and the way that we do things are different, but it sort of does sort of fall into verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus,
Yeah.
So it gets a little tired sometimes to me. So that's probably as much me trying to do that as using the different sounds and mixing styles with this shit ton of reverb and all that. I just want to keep fucking heads up.
Yeah, man. As a listener, I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, man. It's like, like I said, like it could go back to something as far as like me listening to jazz as a kid, like how different that stuff was in the early, I guess, sort of bebop, but more so into maybe like Miles Davis in the 80s going off, like just shit like that. I'm just a big fan of that. And I'm a big fan of any artist who doesn't stay to one particular style too much. I'm with that,
What
as long as they're good at it.
Yeah. What are some current artists that you're listening to?
Oh man, like rap just in general, or
I'd like to know about rap specifically, but also other stuff.
Well, RTJ, obviously, those guys are,
yeah,
they're doing it right. See who else I've been listening to. I mean, I listen to Danny Brown a lot. I listen to Ace a lot. I listen to, man, there's so many, but every time I get asked this question, I'm just like blank.
Nah, same with me.
Yeah. It's always crazy to me because I like listen to a ton of stuff. Like, I've definitely fallen into sort of, and I guess this is how they programmed whatever they did with music, but I've fallen into a point where I'll listen to like 4 or 5 songs from an artist, and I won't listen to their whole album. I think the last thing I bought was probably my man Preservation.
Yeah, that's a great album, DJ Preservation.
Yeah, that album, Eastern Medicine, Western Sickness?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. And Arm & Hammer, most recently.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I actually have been a low-key fan of Billy Woods for a long time.
Yeah, he's awesome. Have you heard the new Koreatown Oddity album?
You know what? I actually haven't, but I do like that guy.
Yeah, I've been a fan for a while, but his new album was really something else. I definitely recommend that one. Kind of reminded me of like Prince Paul De La Soul kind of collaborations as far as just like the whole way it's structured and all the sampling and stuff is really cool. Anyway,
no, that's I'll check that out, man, because I'm not super familiar with his stuff, but I know the few things that I've heard. I was like, yo, this, he's doing it.
Also, I was wondering, have you heard much of like this? I guess I'd call it a wave of rap music that's really kind of lo-fi with no beats or quiet beats. Like people like, I guess the latest Earl Sweatshirt stuff has been like that, and then like people like Mavi and Mike.
Yeah, I think that sort of, because when I started out, and where I sort of came when I started putting music out professionally, everything was like hard and backbone. But there's a lot of people that say that Sonic Sum was like a big part of could have been right in the same frame as that, So I give respect to that, like, I mean, I don't know. It's a tough one to sort of nail down, but I definitely do. I do like a lot of that stuff, and I'm with anybody who's pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, I think it's a surprising trend. I definitely didn't see that coming. I wonder if it's gonna like go into like straight up ambient rap next, or if the drums are gonna come back.
I mean, that's kind of funny. It's like like when I was making Boca Raton, there was a point where I could have removed the drums completely. You know what I'm saying? And I have actually done that before on certain songs where, I just was like, oh, let me see what it sounds like without the drums. That's something that you experiment with at times, or at least I did.
Yeah.
And it's a cool feel. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's definitely a cool feel, but there's always going to be a part of me that wants that boom bap shit. There's always going to be a part of me that's like, okay, I can pull the drums off this shit or not make the drums so loud. Like, I put a single out in February, and I sort of had I had to deal with a lot of negative feedback because everybody was just like, yo, the fucking drums are too loud. We can't hear you. I was like, I love it. But, they were like, oh, your vocals are mixed too low. And I was just like, or the drums are too loud, whichever way you want to put it. But I love that shit. I love, that's the glue to me. You know what I'm saying? Like heavy New York style fucking boom bap hip hop.
Yeah, I think I like the dynamics. I like a little bit of everything myself, and I'm definitely of the same era that you are, growing up with Run DMC and stuff. So that loud, impactful kick and snare will always be very close to my heart.
Yeah, like Mantronic. Like, I mean, at one point it was just like drum machines. It was just, like what is It's Yours is like, by Tila Rock. There's not much to that song, like in terms of music, but that's basically all it was at one point, just drum machines. And I love that, and I think that it's returned sort of, you know. I think the 808 has, while it's always been there, it's made a return to music in a way that I sort of never expected.
Definitely wouldn't expect to hear it in a car commercial like you do now.
Yeah, I mean, anything, it's all over, and that's kind of cool to me to see, because as a kid, I love that shit,
Yeah, the 808 never gets old for me somehow. So, does your new album have a title?
I'm going back and forth right now. The tentative title that I have for it is Hammer of Chaos.
Oh, yeah. I read that somewhere.
Yeah, I kind of like to metal my shit out a little bit sometimes. Like, I just like, to sort of invoke or evoke some sort of feeling of over-dramatic dynamics that are just like, rah. So it kind of feels like a marvel.
I've noticed that element for sure, and it definitely goes along with the hard drums too. A name like Hammer of Chaos.
Right, and then I was thinking there's some other ones that I'm toying with, but right now that's my working title. So,
any expected release date at all?
I like to release my records in the winter. Mm-hmm. So but obviously things have sort of, like, I was moving right along actually in January, and then February came around, and it was like, what the fuck is going on? And it actually had an opposite effect on me, like the lockdowns and things that, like a lot of people were like, oh, but this is great for you because you're this creative person and you can, work and not have to worry about going outside. But then you start worrying about it when you're not allowed to,
Right.
Like when you're not supposed to be outside or seeing people. And as I said earlier in our talk, like, people influence me, and little subtleties of interaction with people and real time sort of influence me as much as anything else. So that it's been kind of slow, like I had a full head of steam. I was making jams. I was, I'm about halfway through it. So, I was like making all this stuff and just getting all the skeletons lined up. And then, like, by March, I was like running around, like trying to volunteer and help people that couldn't go out and get their own food and stuff. And I don't know, it took a different, it went into a different cabinet in my head, like if I wasn't sort of helping or paying attention to what's going on in the actual reality of it, it was kind of hard to escape. So it went kind of slow, but I think now I'm probably getting back in the feel of it. We've been now dealing with this thing, and it doesn't look like it's going away. So either shit or get off the pot, I guess.
Yeah.
And try not to get fucking COVID.
Yeah. You've been self-releasing your stuff for the last couple of albums at least, right?
Yeah, two of them.
Yeah. Is that the plan for this next one?
Yeah, as far as I know, there's no labels beating down my door. So I don't know I would always love to be able to reach more people, because there's only so many people I can reach. I don't have like 100,000 Twitter followers or 100,000 Instagram followers, but it's cool. It's not. I've experienced success on different levels in this game throughout my career. And I can pay the bills with it. When I put out records, I can pay the bills with it, and I can sort of decide of what I'm going to offer. And I like that aspect, control aspect, because I can sort of not have to get clearance if I want to do like a certain color of vinyl or a certain style of art, finish, things like that. I can just say, okay, well, here it is. Here's how, I do try to, I put a lot into it. So, it's not going to make me rich. I'm not going to be able to afford that house anytime soon, but, at least I'm putting music out there and I'm doing it my way.
Let's see. Do we have time to break down this song at all?
We can, man. But like I said, man, those lyrics are butchered. Holy moly. Like, I had no idea that they were that bad. I didn't even know that they were up there until you asked me. And then I looked at them and it was like, oh my God. Like, I didn't realize how bad they were. I thought they were just a little bit off. But yeah, we can definitely, I'll make the corrections where need be.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be interesting. So the song is Honeymoon Suite. That's the first track off of Defriender.
Yeah.
All right, so the first line is, honeymoon's over. I'm pretty sure the marriage is.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Basically, yeah, I'm just talking about like any kind of time you have to break out of some sort of relationship, whether it be your own or whether it be with a job or whether over, there's always that point you just end up on the couch like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yes, and is it limping to the sofa? It says through the sofa.
Yeah, it's limping to the sofa with a drippy nose, embarrassing.
Just, being sick and tired, basically.
Yeah, it's what it is with any bad relationship. That's basically what that line is. American
Muscle got his hustle from a cottonmouth?
Yeah, from the cottonmouth snake.
Ah.
Like if you like, I don't know if anybody knows, but like that's like it's sort of a deadly snake that I just remember being a kid and being like, watch your step, sort of move because there might be cottonmouths in these woods or whatever you were walking through, and you always just get really scared of that on the East Coast.
Okay. So it's like the typical American psyche is motivated by fear, basically.
Absolutely, and always like, okay, this is how you have to tread or walk or whatever it is, and it's, death is right around the corner at all times.
Uh-huh. Tearing through the muzzle in a subtle hint of common ground.
Tearing through the muzzle in the subtle hint of common ground. So it's basically like, this is a terrible relationship, I'm going to be out. Like, you just sort of just let the dogs out. You just, that's what that is. Like, you can't stop me from saying what I'm going to say right now. I'm out of here. And of course, all your relationships would have some sort of common ground, or else you wouldn't be in there. That's probably all that remains of certain relationships after you've, been through the ringer with somebody.
And this next line, I think it's wrong, but seek bowls tokers.
Yeah, it's a Stand By Me reference.
Oh.
It's actually sick balls tocus.
Ah.
Like when they were running from the dog chopper.
Yes. What's tocus though?
It's like that guy grabbed him and he was like, your dad's the loony up in tocus.
Okay.
So it's literally a reference to that, and that goes back to the original meaning of the song. Because it's Stand By Me. Like how we couldn't stand by each other.
All right, let's do one more line.
All right.
Ready for my close-up or get blown up in a Denny's booth.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, what I think has become social media. Like, I mean, you just like, okay, cool, I'm going to, take this selfie of me in this Denny's booth, and you have no idea what the hell's going to happen to you. It goes back to America's sort of landscape and just being a dangerous, dangerous place. It's sort of mocking that whole thing. It's mocking like our culture of vanity.
Would you say that sums up the song essentially, as far as the whole theme of it?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is about bad relationships. The whole thing is about like, and it goes back into certain things from my childhood, like watching the movie Stand By Me and thinking that you would always have your brothers with you. And that doesn't necessarily stay. And I've just been very unlucky with certain relationships that I thought would always remain. And that's why it's called Honeymoon Suite, because it's not that sweet, and it hasn't been a rosy one for me.
Hey. Do you like unique, experimental, and otherwise weird rap music? And do you like helping to make the world a less horrific place? Well, then you'll love the new Weird Rap Records compilation album, Interdependence, featuring exclusive tracks from Clipping, Kool Keith, Mike Ladd, Ram LZ, AWOL1, Beans, Mestizo, and many more, with all profits going to Mutual Aid Disaster Relief, a collectively operated volunteer network providing aid to victims of natural disasters, now including the COVID-19 pandemic. Check it out at weirdrap.com.
Dr. What? Lay courtesy cuts. word like scrap metal, push to the pedal, super extraordinary scientific reason. My theory.
I mean, because I kind of don't care where I live. Like, if I'm not, like, back home and on the East Coast, it doesn't really matter to me. Like, all the West Coast is somehow the same to me. So I was just looking for places that might be cool to be, and Reno was one of them. But I didn't end up going, so now I'm still in Portland.
Oh, so you're in Portland, Oregon. I did not realize that.
Yeah, I'm in Oregon.
When did you move to Portland?
I ended up here about 3.5 years ago.
How did that happen?
Well, I came out west for a girl,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
And just because I wanted to get out of the Bronx because I was having some problems with my my landlord. They were like trying to force me out because they were like, in New York, you can only raise a rent so much, but if you sell a new building, the new landlord can jack the rent up. So my rent went from $800 to about $1,400 in the matter of a year. The landlords in New York are super powerful, so they were just trying to complete their master plan of gentrification in certain areas, I guess would be the best way to put it. As ominous as that is a thing that happens in America.
Yeah. And how are you finding Portland?
Oh, well, I've been here for a while now. At first, it was very strange for me. Portland is sort of a strange place anyways, but it was very different for me in terms of obviously pace and other things like that. And, coming out of the Bronx and going to Portland was an extreme culture shock.
I bet.
Yeah.
So I met you actually about a year ago. You were playing a show. I forget what the town was called.
No way. You came out to the Defender tour?
Yeah. I actually.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Was that in a place? Was that out? That was between San Francisco and what was the name of that place?
I forget exactly what it's called. It's just north of San Francisco in Marin County.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. I think there was probably about 8 people at that one, which was a pretty good night for us on that tour.
Really? Yeah.
That was a tough one.
Yeah. I opened up for you that night actually, but you didn't see it. You were upstairs or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I remember the place exactly. I think I got pretty hammered that night actually afterwards, but
could be. Well, yeah, I brought it up because I wanted to talk about this, the phenomenon of the ego in rap music. And when I met you, as well as from what I've gathered from your online presence, you seem like a very comfortable in their shoes type of person, not like posturing or trying to impress anyone much, like a not very egocentric person. Would you agree with that?
I think to an extent. I think we all have a little bit of the id. So, I kind of am aware of who I am, which is a good thing. But I think, I would tend to agree that I try not to I don't really think I'm better than anybody else.
Yeah. And because, it seems like it's deeply intertwined in hip hop culture, this certain kind of boastfulness and braggadocious egocentrism. It takes a certain amount of confidence and self-importance just to get on a microphone and talk, period, I'd say.
I think anybody who's inclined to do any kind of public speaking has to have a little of that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm completely free of it.
Yeah. And I'm definitely not talking shit because I've been an MC myself, but I just think it's interesting that, there is the sort of the trope of rappers rapping about how good they can rap, and diss records are a staple in rap music. And there's plenty of cultural reasons to explain why that's the case. And I'm not I don't really want to argue against it or talk about that really, but I just thought it'd be interesting to know how you personally have oriented yourself to that aspect of the culture. And I know, you've also have done, your own style of battle rapping sort of, or brag rapping, and you've made it, you've definitely elevated it, I would say, to I
like I told you in the first part of this, like, I think the art is probably more important than me. Just making a complete piece of really solid music it's not something that comes that easy to me. I've always had to work very hard at it, so I've always sort of approached it as with a workman-like attitude. And I think that when you do that, I think that doesn't necessarily, it's not as glamorous as some people may, approach their style with. So I think, I definitely talk shit. I definitely think that, I can hold my own on the mic when it comes to that, but it's not in the forefront with me as much as the overall piece of music.
Yeah, and I'd say, whereas some talk about how they're the best just because that's kind of a certain fashion in hip hop, I would say that you actually are one of the best, especially in your vein. So,
oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I wonder, are there any MCs that you could list where you're like, wow, they really give me a run for my money?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's tons. Like, my personal favorite rapper ever is Kool G Rap. That's a super intellectual dude, when it comes to when he was doing his style and what he had, the way he was crafting lyrics and shit like that. It was, there was none better than G Rap. And then, Pharoahe Monch, obviously people I've been lucky enough to meet and work with, like LP and Aesop. Those guys are incredible writers and incredible rappers. Killer Mike, obviously. Man, there's so many. Open Mike Eagle's fucking amazing. Like I can go on forever. You know what I'm saying? So that probably goes back into the question you asked me before. Like, that would be another reason I wouldn't be out there running off the mouth too much, because I know that there's dudes that are actively working right now that that have come before me. Rakim, these guys have laid the foundation for hyper lyrical writing and just develop this music to be what it is. So I would never even put myself in that category. If I didn't hear G-Rap, if I didn't hear KRS, if I didn't hear Pharoahe, if I didn't hear, early Cage and shit, like where dudes were just really pushing styles and really pushing what they were doing, I wouldn't have gone the way I went.
Yeah, speaking of Kool G Rap, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about him, because, he's listed by many MCs as one of the greats, and I'm of your era. My first Kool G Rap album was Wanted Dead or Alive. Is that what it was called? The second album? Yeah. And,
that's the second one, yeah.
Yeah, and I loved it, and I still love it to this day. It's really nostalgic. And then I later got Road to the Riches, which I also really enjoyed. And then, I've always enjoyed it, but I've never really understood why people say he's the greatest or one of the greatest. So I wonder if you can verbalize that for me, help me understand.
Well, the time had a lot to do with it. When G-Rap did it, nobody was really putting words together like that, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of people that come out and be like, well, KRS is better or whatever. It's all that's left up to interpretation and personal appeal. But to me, when G-Rap came out and the way he was putting shit together, like when I heard Road to the Riches, I had never heard anything like that. Just real dense wordplay and pushing rap music to a place where it was going to maintain this intellectual credibility. You know what I'm saying? Like, as opposed to just being like a party thing or a battle thing.
Now that you mention it, there was like a density also maybe it was a lot of short phrases strung together as opposed to the typical like kind of longer sentence structure. Would you say that?
Yeah. Like there were certain artists that really started working with incredible ability and to sort of make phrases and rhyme structures pliable to the point where you couldn't front on it. You couldn't be like, "Oh, rap is full of shit," because that's what everybody was talking about when rap was making the wave of rap, when it started to become, popularized to a point where people started listening to it outside of the inner cities. A lot of people just shit on it as, this is dumb shit. This is like, but you can't say that about G-Rap. You can't say that about KRS. You can't say that about Rakim. You can't say that about, so many artists, like De La and shit like that. Like, there was no stopping it. So I think that was a conscious effort made by people that wanted that, wanted it to be on a different level. And they pushed that. And those are the guys who did that, G-Rap was important in that because he was also keeping it extremely real from like a street sense. So where, heads didn't have to be into this intellectual mindset to listen to, because he's talking about like blood stains on my body, stuck a guy ratty, so shot him in the alley type shit like that. Like,
right.
And obviously there's the Chuck D's and people like that were also a part of making this thing bigger than what it was. But, you could never say that about guys like G-Rap. You could never be like, it's just some dumb shit, just a bunch of dudes like rapping like, oh, fucking Mother Hubbard shit,
Yeah, I'm realizing I feel like I hear a lot of G-Rap and Ghostface now that we're talking about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, Wu, they were later on, but it all, if you go back and do like a chronological look at it, you can see the sort of slope of where it was all became very lyrical and less about beats and party stuff and more about actually sitting down and absorbing what this man is saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, that's enlightening for me because it all hit me at the same time. I think I got into rap when I was 10 in 1988, I think. And I just all of a sudden was introduced to this flood of rap, living out in the middle of nowhere. I didn't really know about it until I cracked the.
Well, and that's sort of what it was like for me, like that push, like I saw it from the beginning, because I got you by a few years. So,
yeah,
when I came up, it was like I told you before, it was like, okay, look at like Rapper's Delight. That was just like, it's amazing and it's incredible, but I mean, what the fuck? You're talking about like, I'm going over with my friends out. Not necessarily like hyper topical on what actually may have been going on. But then there's the message, which was one of the first things I ever heard, which is completely about that. So, it seems very natural to me that dudes would push the intellectual boundaries the way they did. I mean, think of any other music besides that, you know what I'm saying? That sort of is like verbal sparring or stringing together verses the way it does. Nothing really did that before in popular culture.
Yeah, it's definitely in a world of its own, I'd say. I have a list of MCs, some of whom I'd say are in a similar abstract and advanced vein as you, and some that are pretty different. But I was wondering if you could let me know what you think of them as artists. And of course, we can cut anything if you don't want to be disparaging, but I imagine you'll mostly have good things to say about these people.
Yeah, I tend not to disparage people's art.
Yeah. So a couple from like the sort of era of late 90s, early aughts, NYC art rap, Saul Williams.
Saul is an amazing poet. So I actually have had the pleasure of meeting and hanging out with Saul a few times, and he's an incredible writer. And there's a lot of people that sort of put me in, not really in with the poetry scene that was sort of bubbling in New York at the time. But, I have a great deal of respect for those dudes, like Mike Ladd and Saul Williams and Jessica Care-Moore and dudes and Bosia and guys like that. Like that, they're on a different plane. So Saul Saul's an incredible talent. And he can act. Just that guy is a treasure.
but I feel like he doesn't get credit in the hip hop community for being an MC as much as he should. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if he would necessarily be bothered by that, to be honest, because I think he's in his own lane, and I think that he probably is. He should get credit for just the writing and song structure that he puts together, because it's not it may be different, but I think that people are. If they're sleeping on Saul, they don't know what they're missing if they're a fan of good writing and incredible voices and just strength and what they're doing,
Yeah, I feel like the hip hop culture as a whole could benefit if he was listed alongside more like Kendrick Lamar and Jay-Z as, rappers that, everyone should listen to learn how to rap or whatever. But
yeah, I think, but like I said, I don't know him personally like that, but I think he probably is very comfortable with where he's at. I don't think it's necessarily one of those things where he'd be like, "Oh, cats don't think I'm barring out like I am," but he actually is barring out. So yeah, you're probably right. He probably does deserve a little more credit in the rap world.
And I'm sure you get much better pay, performing at a museum than you do at a rap show, so I'm sure he's doing fine.
Like I said, that guy is certainly diversified enough with all his many talents to be, well enough known and respected in many fields, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about, like, during that same era where I first heard about you when the first Sonic Sum album came out, and that whole, like, anti-pop ozone music scene was starting to do its thing on the West Coast. At the same time, I got into Anticon, and I felt like there was definitely big differences between the two general scenes, if you can call them. I don't know if you would even consider what I'm talking about as a scene with the NYC art rap stuff, but just because you had similar labels and management or whatever. But
Ozone put out my first music.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying? Like that's my people's, like Anti-Pop and Saul and all. We were all under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
Even L and company floor.
Right. I imagined you guys were all hanging out with each other, but I don't know if it was really like that.
Yeah, Ozone was like where we all recorded our music.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michi and all those guys, they sort of, if not for them, who knows, you guys might never hear me. So I try to remind people of that sometimes. I'll put up a throwback of me and L, or me and Meech, and me and, just dudes that were around back then that I toured with a lot of those dudes, way back, and they were on a higher level than me. I was just sort of I had come from a more traditional rap standpoint, and I started, just because of what I wanted Sonic Sum to be. I changed that a little bit, and that was the perfect tone for it, because those guys really were like, just do you. It don't matter if people don't want to let you in. We'll try and help you get through anyway.
I consider that a very special and monumental time and place in hip hop. For me, it was
very creative. It was super creative.
Yeah, it was very inspiring for me. And
now, in terms of what you were asking about Anticon, I would sit here. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm very familiar with their stuff.
Yeah,
because I ended up meeting a lot of those guys later and just being cool with them, but I didn't know really what they were doing outside of that unfortunate situation with L and Saul.
Yeah,
I was introduced to their music through that.
Right.
And that's probably not a fair or good starting point to jump off.
Yeah, well, in retrospect, they were pretty divisive. They did a lot of things like that were kind of like immediately offensive, like naming their album, their compilation music for the advancement of hip hop or something like that. It was like a little.
Yeah, I tend to think that was Yeah, I think that's probably about when I had first heard about them. There was also a magazine that was really integral in pushing artists like us, and it was called Herb Magazine. And I think Sonic Sum and a bunch of the Anti-Con guys, and maybe even Slug, I don't know. But we were all in one of the next 100 first 100 issues that they used to put out, and that is another way I became familiar with them. Now, you're talking to a guy who was so inundated in New York culture and rap at the time that I didn't even know people were rapping out there. Like, when I first met Slug, I was like, he's from Minneapolis. I didn't even know motherfuckers rapped out there like that.
Yeah, specifically, I was wondering about Dose One, who I know worked with Aesop Rock early on. I wonder, had you been aware of him? Do you have any thoughts on his approach?
No, I met him. I met him later, and I met them when they were doing Cloudhead as Dose, right?
Yeah, he was part of that.
Okay, so I saw a Cloudhead show, I think, and that's how I knew him. And he's just a cool guy. I mean, I probably knew them more on a individual level more than a music level at that time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just wondering maybe what you thought about his like poetry style or whatever, his writing style.
Oh, I think when I got to know it, I thought it was dope. I think at first maybe I didn't really open up to it as much because it was very different. But when I actually saw him put it down, he's got skills, man.
Okay, and now that you mention not being too aware of music west of NYC, what about Project Blowed? Were you familiar much with that?
No, I wasn't until I went on tour with Bus Driver. That was years later when I had done my first record. That is when I was introduced to all that stuff. Because I knew of Freestyle Fellowship, but I didn't know of Project Blowed.
Okay.
So, Freestyle Fellowship was crazy when they came out. So I didn't know that it was this sort of much larger movement going on out west. Like, I didn't know anything about Good Life. I didn't know anything because I was an East Coaster, just New York, everything, And I didn't know about that stuff until much later.
Okay, how about this? A little less underground. Had you caught wind of Sir Mix-a-Lot before Baby Got Back?
Oh yeah. I mean, Posse's on Broadway was. I mean, that I still play that song.
Yeah, I think his first two albums had some pretty interesting stuff, especially for the times.
Yeah, I think my one of my dudes actually bought the album, but it was back when like you didn't really like buying albums back then. Like, you kind of had to do it yourself. And if I wasn't hanging out with my dude all the time, I didn't really hear a bunch of it. But I know when Posse's on Broadway came out, I was like, yo, that shit is fucking hard.
Yeah.
It was kind of the same way with, I guess, all West Coast gangster. Well, that's not really gangster rap, but yeah. But it was like, it was new to me when I heard Straight Outta Compton and all that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, what? What is Compton?
But Posse on Broadway must have got played on the radio a little bit in NYC, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, people played it. I mean, it's like, it was a big song. It was like a huge hit. So, but that's sort of how we got to see that, like outside of like Papito and stuff like that, playing certain things. But most of that was East Coast stuff. Like, there was just a few would come through, like Casual and Dell and those guys. Obviously, that's a little later, but yeah. They that was news to me too. Like when Hyro came out, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I think Sir Mix-a-Lot and Too Short probably both influenced the hieroglyphics sound to some degree.
Yeah, see, Too Short's crazy. Too Short's like I knew of Too Short for years. Like, I knew of him, but had never heard any Too Short music. It's kind of crazy. I guess maybe Blow the Whistle was like the first one I heard, but
oh wow,
it didn't really strike me as. I mean, I don't know when that song came out. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, he didn't really have radio friendly music, And on the West Coast, they were playing that song "Life Is Too Short," and that was like.
Oh yeah. Actually, that is the first one. Life is too short.
Okay.
But like one dude out of the crew that I was rolling with at the time liked it.
But you couldn't dance to that song. I don't think it was like a slow.
Yeah. Like I was a big fan of like DOC when he came out too. In terms of like West Coast stuff, like that guy was pretty amazing. I liked anybody who was bringing it lyrically.
Mm. As we wind down, I heard you allude to almost quitting music a couple of times.
Every day.
You still think
Every
about
day.
it?
Every single day.
What makes you want to quit, and what keeps you doing it?
When I say quit, I mean I don't mean stop making music. I mean stop releasing music.
Right.
And that is just because I think that I haven't been particularly successful doing it. And I think that at some point when you're, closer to 50 than you are 20, then you start being like, what the fuck did I just do my entire life?
Yeah, the marketing and selling becomes a bummer.
Well, it's just like, what was all this for? I was never wildly successful at any point. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's been a struggle. I've had to have those conversations with people that put out my music, every single one of them, that, hey, we can't do another Rob Sonic record because you're not selling any records. And, that part of it, it's hard to get up from that over and over and over again. I have been unable to pay rent. I have been unable to eat food. So, as a human being, you would be silly not to have that conversation with yourself.
Yeah. What do you chalk it up to? Because like Aesop Rock has become pretty popular. He does well. And I feel
Absolutely.
like his style is just as, out there and similar in a lot of ways to yours. Why do you think he has kind of gone where he has and you haven't?
Well, outside of the typical response, which is, you never know what's going to catch fire and you never know what's not going to. My personal opinion is he has a better voice.
Mm.
I think that is one of the things where I don't necessarily have as a unique a voice as him. And I think that he caught fire at the right time and he hooked up with Jokes at the right time. And I mean, people loved what he was doing and how he was doing it. And he just resonated with more people than a lot of people,
Yeah.
And we don't know why that is. We don't know why the appeal, and I don't know anybody who does. Maybe there's a secret, that people don't know. But I remember when it happened. I remember like opening up for Ace at a show in Brooklyn with Sonic Sum, and RJ was on the bill as well. And literally like no one being there to see Sonic Sum, and we had already been on the scene for a little while. There was no one there to see Sonic Sum, and it was a packed house just to see Ace. So, and I was shocked. I was like, wow, this is crazy to me. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't realize he was that big. And he's just, he just has that thing that people love, and he's somewhat of a star because of it,
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there may be some intangible quality that's hard to verbalize.
That's what it seems like to me. It is very intangible. I can never put my finger on why somebody is bigger than, X is bigger than Y or Y is bigger than Z.
So speaking of him, I have no idea whatever happened between the two of you, but I've seen some recent rumors online that maybe you two are going to do something again. Is that possible?
Well, I think we, we started Hail Mary Mallon 3, the third installment of Hail Mary Mallon 3. We started it years ago. And I think that, I think we play with the idea sometimes that we'll put another one out, but I don't, it's not necessarily on the forefront of what I'm doing. I think he's doing other stuff too. So who knows, man? Like, I think that, it's probably more likely that we will eventually put that project out.
Cool. Maybe I'll start a petition or something.
I think there's probably 60 or 70 of those already.
Okay. Next, we'll be joined by Curly Castro of Shrapnel, Blue Edwards, and Wrecking Crew, all of which have recent releases that I emphatically recommend. He's also 1/3 of the highly entertaining Call Out Culture podcast. He will be reviewing a classic and sorely overlooked album by Skip Kuhn from 2014 titled Miles Garvey.
With the Guam people, this is Curly Castro. You know what I'm saying? I'm here today to give y'all my thoughts/review on the wonderful opus by Skip Kuhn called Miles Garvey. I asked my fellow podcaster, Alaska, we do the Call Out Culture podcast together. I said, give me an opening quote. You know, I'm about to do this review and shit. He said, Bond. He said, Skip Kuhn, Bond. If a nation of millions and Aquemini had a child, it would be Skip Kuhn's Miles Garvey. And that's an amazing statement in itself. Salute to Alaska. You know what I'm saying? Like, this album, it really did something to me when I first heard it. It dropped in 2014, and I was just blown away. We got 9 tracks, no filler, Illmatic-like in terms of like just straight to the point. It starts off with this joint called We Aim at Teeth by the poet Tongo Ison Martin. And right then I'm caught in. I didn't even know Skip. I didn't know his rapping voice at all, so I was just wondering if this was him, if he was doing poetry or whatever. But, you know, if you have real strong spoken word, as cliche as it can be, I'm in it. And then he got this song called Blacker. And these are the first 2 bars. Black fist to the sky, black power. Black polymer in the chaos hour. What? You know what I'm saying? you ain't gotta say much more, so I'm already in. I'm loving the imagery. One of his earlier videos, he's dressed as a preacher with a soapbox, literally walking around from corner to corner, propping up his soapbox, getting on top and spitting his bars. He got another track called Ruramar. And the first couple of bars are, I'm standing on this corner like God ain't returning and this ghetto ain't burning bright. Like, he really is just speaking the language of the people, like, you know, melanin bars, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Like, struggle bars, but not in the sense I'm struggling to get something. I'm struggling to maintain. I'm struggling to fight all of this oppression. And not in a corny way. He's not preachy at all, even though he has a video where he's dressed like a preacher. He got another great song, Stops You Dead in Your Tracks. It's called Asada Taught Me. And he's like, I talk to God on the regular and retro Jordans, a pistol and a cellular. No, I'm just doing his accent. My man is dope. And the track and the video for that track, it's only badass shorties and shit. There's no dudes at all. And it seems like they're interviewing them. So there's a narrative that's even behind the song, that's behind the video. So I was just enraptured. These queens are just radiating off of the screen. And I'm just loving it. You know what I mean? Really, just as an artist, he reminds me of like a modern day Paris, an intelligent hoodlum before the tragedy. You know what I'm saying? Just really, really solid MC shit. Really sharp bars, swords out the ass. He got other songs on there called Torn, Atheist, and then he ends it with this 13-minute, this 13-minute piece. And I mean piece, P-E-A-C-E. And it's called Jafrican Sunset. And Jafrica is this land that he's created within this record that all of us liberated people should try to get to. Maybe we'll catch the Black Star Line and ride out there. And then it's like half song, half instrumental. There's poetry on there. And it's just a great way to close out an album to really make a good stand. So, you know what I'm saying? I just have to get this record like 5 black fists up. You know what I'm saying? Like, this gets all the 10 points. You know what I mean? Like, it's just really, really quality work. Salute my brother Skip. We looking out for more of his stuff. Go check this. Go his album, the vinyl sold out. Go check all his past works. The brother Skip Kuhn, you know what I'm saying? Really solid. Miles Garvey. You know, we doing it. So this is Curly Castro, Call Out Culture, Shrapnel, Wrecking Crew, signing off. Peace.
I corresponded briefly with Skip, who we'll hopefully have as a guest in the future, to ask him about his next album, which he says is finished. It actually features Curly Castro, as well as Pi Infamous and Coke Bumaye. The album is titled August, Radio Free Jafrica, and it doesn't have a current release date, but Skip said he'd let me preview it at some point for the podcast, so that's exciting. You can check out Skip Coon's music, all of which I highly recommend, at Tibbit, that's TIBBIT.bandcamp.com. And now, we've got some commentary from Lil Ghostwriter.
Rap can be weird musically, and rap can be weird lyrically. I want to talk about weird rapping, lyrical weirdness, and its commonality with, and its being sometimes an expression of, the disorganized speech of the schizophrenic. I want to talk about Rap Ferreira, a rapper who is neither extremely weird nor extremely normal, but who works between those two extremes. And in particular, I want to point out a couple of lines about the mentally ill that I've noticed in his album, Budding Ornithologists Are Weary of Tired Analogies. First, let me make clear that I think Rap Ferreira, or Milo, or Scallops Hotel is a great rapper. I don't think there are many rappers as interesting. Very few rappers would rhyme Word is Bond with Lacan, as he does on the track Romulan Ale. You dig? As many rappers will boastfully rap about their money, their property, Ferreira adorns his raps with philosophical references to Bishop Berkeley, to Proudhon, to Schopenhauer, and so on and so on. It's great. Now let's really get into what weird rap has to do with schizophrenia or psychosis generally, before we get into why Ferreira is a semi-schizophrenic rapper, as well as, I am sad to say, a possibly semi-schizophobic rapper, which is sadly a relatable position, no doubt, for many, since there is very little general understanding among people of what schizophrenia really is. I have a different, more open definition of psychosis than the one accepted among psychiatrists, but it is based on their definition. Psychosis is a loss of contact with reality, a disconnection from reality. If you think people can read your thoughts, or that you are constantly presented with signs from God among ordinary life events, that is considered by psychiatrists psychosis. My more open definition of psychosis includes more generally the attribution of meaning to life events. It includes any certainties you may have about reality. It's a strange cruelty of our society that we label only the most extreme cases of detachment from reality psychosis, and in some more specific cases, schizophrenia. All of life, to me, is a relation between psychosis and reality, between things as they appear, phenomena, and things as they are, things in themselves, between words and the real reference of language out there in reality, between psychotic ideology and the material conditions which give rise to all these psychotic ideas in our heads. There is no such thing as a being fully in touch with reality. There are just different levels of removal from reality, just different types of psychosis. There are the ichthyocentric thinkers who believe everything exists for fish. Usually these are fish. There is the Kantian who believes in the unknowableness of all that is noumenal. And there are those who are somewhat more sane in their dealing with reality. The Freudo-Marxists, God bless them, and so on. All are psychotic. But so here's the connection of psychosis to weird rapping. One of the symptoms of psychosis, or of schizophrenia in particular, is weird, disorganized, playful speech. Stuff like making up words, which makes you a neologist. Stuff like using words unconventionally, which means you're employing rhetorical devices such as anakoluthon, such as katakresis. If you think about it, this makes perfect sense. If psychosis is a detachment from reality, then of course your language, which mediates your experience of reality, becomes strange. The relation of signifiers to signifieds will grow tenuous, just as the relation of signifieds in your head to referents in the world grows tenuous. Weird speech is not at all some weird extra thing that comes with schizophrenia. It's a natural byproduct of it. Lacan, in a seminar on psychoses, said something like this, that the signifier breaks free of the signified in psychosis. But, so anyway, keeping all that in mind, I think there are two opposite extremes in rap. On one end of the spectrum, there's the ultra-weird schizophrenic extreme. That's rappers like Sharkula and MC Ride of Death Grips, which follows the tradition in literature of writers like Gertrude Stein. At the opposite extreme of the spectrum, there's the not weird and totally lucid rap. Drake is the exemplar I immediately think of when I think of the not weird side of rap. This style of rap follows the tradition of such writers as Jane Austen and Jonathan Franzen. It's very normal. Rap Ferreira works in the middle, between these extremes. There is a lot in his raps that makes sense, especially if one has at least a cursory familiarity with enough of what he's rapping about. But there is a lot in his style, especially the later style. There's a lot that's schizophrenic, weird, playful, just really delightfully bizarre. His decision to mispronounce Vladimir Nabokov's name, he says Nobokov, on the song Call and Form, is classic schizophrenia. His decision at the beginning of Sorcerer to say I mean instead of amen, that's classic schizophrenia. If you've heard his stuff, you know what I'm talking about. It's very abstract in the hip-hop sense of the word. But then there are plenty of examples in Ferreira's lyrics of his valuing definite literal meaning and lucidity nevertheless. And again, if you've heard his stuff, you know what I'm talking about. It seems to me that he has a sense of himself, though, as speaking more truth in his raps than most. A sense of sense is more valuable than nonsense, and yet he himself is often nonsensical. And if you agree with my definition of psychosis, he's often psychotic. His lyrics are often beautiful examples of schizophrenic, disorganized speech. So here are the problematic passages about psychosis in Rap Ferreira's album Budding Ornithologists Are Wary of Tired Analogies. They're not totally problematic, they're just interesting. The chorus of the song Galahad and Goosedown is, if life were a dream of euphoria, we would not have schizophrenia or paranoia. Now it's true that for many schizophrenia is bad, but for many schizophrenia can be fun. I think everything is psychosis, as I already said. So is schizophrenia really so bad? The other problematic passage is a problem more because of its unclarity to anyone without the lyrics before their eyes. Though even if you understand what he's saying, he still seems to conclude the song with a judgment of the mentally ill, maybe. I don't know. Here's the passage. On the song mid-answer trying to remember what the question is, he says, maybe some people shouldn't be a part of society. It's a crapshoot trying to rap with Lee's nephew. That nigga's chemicals need balancing. I thought initially he's talking about a friend or relative's mental illness here, and he's juxtaposed it with a comment about how some should not be in society, though in fact he's talking about himself. It's his chemicals that somebody thinks need balancing. Still, then he says, you know, life's all about that balancing, referring to someone else's, someone saner's, golden balancedness. This may seem innocuous until you consider how backwardsly The mentally ill are treated by society. Schizophrenics are solitarily confined in psych wards, regardless of whether they're really a danger to themselves and others. Many don't even know what schizophrenia is. They think it's some kind of a split personality disorder. Most people want nothing to do with schizophrenics. I wish the real message of this passage in Ferreira's song were immediately clearer, but all in all, it's a great song. Anyway, maybe what's most important in this spiel is the part where I drew a connection between weird rapping and schizophrenia, not my criticism of a couple of lines of rapping from Ferreira. I don't know. I hope this all has been useful to whomever.
Lil Ghostwriter is a fantastically inventive and scholarly MC himself. His EP, Inner Plenum, is available on digital and vinyl at WeirdRap.com or AudioRecon.com. In future episodes, I plan to mention all my favorite rap releases from the previous month or however long it's been since the previous episode. But since this is the first episode, I'll just quickly mention my favorite releases from the year so far. I loved Purple Moonlight Pages by Rap Ferreira, which I imagine will be near the top of many others' best of lists for this year. As will Shrines by Armand Hammer and RTJ4 by Run the Jewels, both of which I've also been enjoying. What probably won't make it on most others' lists is Blacklight by Zero, which is almost too weird even for me, and an album whose title and artist name I'm not sure how to pronounce. The artist name is spelled $2030M, and the title is VL::. It's basically a very experimental take on Memphis-style gangster rap. While I'm at it, I'll also mention an associated artist, Cities Aviv, whose album Gum is a pretty nice blend of woozy, lo-fi, and atmospheric elements. Serengeti, who has a pretty distinctive and infectious voice, is constantly releasing singles and EPs on Spotify and Bandcamp, which are all awesome. And his full-length album Ajay is great too. It further expands the narrative of his lovable Kenny Dennis character. Another standout, which I think a lot of others have been discovering, is Little Dominique's Nosebleed by the Koreatown Oddity. It's a beautifully arranged album, which is deep and funny and kind of reminds me of De La Soul's Prince Paul produced albums. Weevil in Disguise by Celestiphone sounds like rap music by a psychedelic cartoon character. It's got exquisite and varied sample-based production and complexly creative lyrics. It reminds me a little bit of Yikes the Zero, whose album An Echo Storm Howling did not come out this year. It was the end of last year, but I'll mention it anyway because I think it deserves more attention. It's got fantastical, colorful beats, and the rapping kind of reminds me of MF Doom if he was a beaver or some other sort of forest creature, maybe. An album that isn't especially experimental or groundbreaking sonically, but which I hold in the highest regard purely for its lyrics, is Kambada's album LSD Lunar Solar Duality. I can't really sum it up quickly. It's been called psych hop for its esoteric references and feels almost like an advancement of the mystical street wisdom style developed by artists like Ka and Killah Priest, who both also released albums ranking high on my list this year. But I'm excited to say we've got an interview with Kambada lined up for a forthcoming episode of Weird Rap, so we'll do a deep exploration into his incredibly far-ranging and singular mind. And lastly, I'll mention Dos Siki by Dos Manos, which is a glorious, cacophonous bouillabaisse of exotic samples and rapping in Japanese. There's been plenty of other releases I've enjoyed this year, all of which you can check out via my posts on the various Weird Rap social media platforms linked at weirdrap.com. You can also sign up for the newsletter there to keep abreast of the various Weird Rap goings-on in a single monthly digest. Weird Rap TV is a lovingly curated collection of music videos, documentaries, interviews, and live performance video playlists at youtube.com/weirdrap. And Weird Rap Radio is a regularly updated and expanding Spotify playlist, which you can find at Spotify without the vowels, that's sptfy.com/weirdrap. We just started a SoundCloud account to share some of the vast collection of music that's unavailable anywhere else but there. And if you want to rate and review this podcast to help our relationship with the algorithms, I will mail you a beautiful full-color vinyl Weird Rap sticker in return. Just email weirdrap3000@gmail.com to claim your prize or to correspond. I would like this podcast to represent a diverse variety of perspectives, so if you have suggestions or if you want to be part of the show, let me know. If you want to conduct an interview, review some music, share some commentary, or open up a discussion, message weirdrap3000@gmail.com. And stay tuned, we've got some awesome stuff coming in future episodes, including Anti-Pop Consortium. We got a bunch of other guests and some complex questions to be discussed. This beat was made by me, The Mole, and I thank you for being here. Fuck normalcy, stay weird.
My producer drinks on juicer. Lyric producer, sucker dub producer. Say goodbye to crack, don't turn your back. I might be new, my name ain't Jack. NFL for football playing, R.I.P. for rhyme saying. Demo boys, pop these, specializing suckers playing. Weird Rap.